Every racing driver's goal is to have a chance at Formula 1, but that also happens to be one of, if not the hardest and most expensive things to do. But it's made a hell of a lot easier when you can ask your father to pay over $300 million for you to participate. Enter Lance Stroll, one of the longest standing paid drivers in F1 history. Most of you probably hate him, and I don't blame you. However, there's a lot more nuances and hidden truths to his story than most media outlets and YouTube channels let you know. I'm going to tell you all the things you didn't know about Lance, break down his highs and lows, and show you exactly how Lance Stroll bought his way into Formula 1. Lance Stroll, or to use his full name, Lance Strollovich, came from money. A lot of money. His businessman father, Lawrence, is worth approximately $4 billion. Still, he had to come a long way to get where he is today. And I don't mean being the most memeified driver in the whole F1 paddock. I mean a full-time F1 seat in a manufacturer-based entry. Sure, his path may not have been as difficult as others due to a few reasons I'll cover shortly, but still, Lance had a decent come-up of his own that is worthy of some respect. The Canadian-Belgian driver started karting at 10 years old, quickly winning races and championships in both Canada and North America. At just 11, he was blessed, or cursed, whichever way you want to look at it, with the chance to join the Ferrari Driver Academy, an opportunity he grabbed with both hands. He raced against fellow future F1 drivers Russell and Verstappen during another 2 years of karting, and by the way, they both beat him. Stroll then threw his toys out of the cart, and with the help of Ferrari, moved to Formula 4 for his first season racing single-seaters, and with the Scuderia's backing, he landed a seat at the Prema in the Italian Formula 4 Championship. It's no secret that Prema gives drivers a brilliant chance to win titles, but here's a fact you might not know. Lance's dad, Lawrence, owned a huge stake in the Prema power team and was rumored to have invested around $60 million into the Italian squad at the time to help give his son the best chances of success. Can you see any reasons yet why some people don't like the Strolls? Anyway, with a mixture of skill, speed, and Lawrence's greed, and to be honest, the help of a very strange rule surrounding his teammates, he won the Italian F4 title in 2014. See, the 21-year-old Brandon Maisano was picked as his teammate so that Stroll could pick up some tips and tricks off the experienced F3 racer. Maisano outscored Stroll by the end of the season, but conveniently, he was too old to be eligible to win the title, so Lance won it by finishing second in the championship. Safe to say that didn't do much to help Stroll's silver spoon reputation. After this, he jumped to Formula 3 in 2015, quickly winning the Toyota Racing Series title in New Zealand. In the same year, he entered the Euro F3 Championship. Surprise, surprise, with Prema again. He outscored Russell and Albon, but was easily beaten by two other future Ferrari family members, Giovinazzi and Leclerc. But I can't just skip over Stroll's 2015 by only talking about the results. He caused this mega crash at Monza after squeezing Giovinazzi off the track. A shunt he was lucky to walk away from. And it didn't get any better in Spa when he triggered a triple DNF.
Oh, they all make contact and it's Rosenqvist who comes off worst.
Taken out himself and two other frontrunners, Jensen and Rosenqvist. This didn't seem to turn off the Williams Formula 1 team though, because later in 2015, he joined them as a development driver. Another rumor had emerged that Lawrence invested $10 million into the team, but Williams firmly denied it. Lance went on to win the 2016 Euro F3 Championship by a huge margin, but again, controversy was not far away. Prema were using team orders to keep his teammates from beating him, and rival George Russell even called them out on their apparent dealings. Not exactly the best look. Still, it would be a few years before he got to F1, right? Well, not quite. Just months after Lance wrapped up the title, the motorsports world was hit with the shocking, well, relatively shocking news that Lance would be stepping up to Formula 1 as a full-time driver for Williams. The extra $80 million that Lawrence paid Williams probably helped to secure this seat. Still, it was a huge jump to go from F3 straight to F1. He became the second youngest F1 driver ever at just 18 years and 153 days old on debut, just a tad older than Max Verstappen. He would end up staying with Williams for 2 years, being teammates with Felipe Massa the first year and Sergei Sirotkin the second. His F1 debut was far from the dream weekend after his crash in free practice 3, but after that, the year improved, slightly. He scored a podium finish in Baku and started second on the grid at Monza after a superb performance in the wet, a skill that he has become known for, but those 2 weekends were the only 2 where he managed to outqualify Massa, as the Brazilian outqualified his rookie teammate 17 races to 2. The average gap over the season was 0.621 seconds in Massa's favour, but we do have Lance to thank for the most comical moment of the season.
After the race has finished, we're on the slowdown lap.
Stroll is not looking where he's going.
That crash was almost as entertaining as my videos, which is definitely more than you get watching the title fight this year, so subscribe to make sure you don't quit watching F1 out of boredom. In 2018, Stroll should have blown his rookie teammate Sergei Sorokin out of the water, but instead was outqualified by him 12 races to 8. The car was clearly terrible, but both drivers were pretty evenly matched throughout the year, with Stroll barely finishing ahead. Still, Sorokin got fired and Lance got rehired. But this time, there was a difference. In the months leading up to the 2019 season, all hell was breaking loose at the Force India team. The team collapsed and was bought by none other than Lance Stroll. In a not-so-shock move, he chose his son to be a driver, and Lance jumped ship to the newly named Racing Point team. He had a somewhat low-key, by low-key I mean he was easily beaten by teammate Sergio Perez in both qualifying and race results. By the end of the year, Lance had completed 3 full seasons in F1 and hadn't done a massive amount to dispel the myth of being a paid driver, even with 1 podium to his name, showing signs of real speed and having flashes of brilliance. The high points were too infrequent, but funnily enough, he was retained for the following year. Daddy Stroll kept the same lineup for the 2020 season, but there were a few changes. The car was more rapid, more illegal, and most importantly, more pink. Joking aside, the RP20 gave the word controversial a whole new meaning. The pink Mercedes, in all its unshamed glory, saw Stroll finish outside the top 10 just once in the entire season. As well as that, he took 2 podium finishes and a blistering pole position in a torrential Turkey.
And for Lance Stroll, in his 75th race in Formula 1, takes pole position.
But teammate Perez took his first race victory in this car, and despite Lance's strong drives, he was once again beaten by the Mexican in both points and qualifying, though the Saturday margins were tighter this time around. A massive crash in the Tuscan Grand Prix and a bizarre flip in Bahrain aren't moments to look back on for Lance. But overall, 2020 was his best season to date, but he was in for a bit of a shock in 2021. Many more millions were exchanged behind the scenes, and all of a sudden Lawrence's squad changed the pink of Racing Point into the green of Aston Martin for 2021. Stroll's new teammate was 4-time champion Sebastian Vettel. I mean, at least Lawrence isn't shy of giving his son a challenge. The only problem was that the car was slow, very slow. This season was pretty miserable for everyone involved, and Stroll's best finish during the entire season was his 6th place finish in Qatar. Then in 2022, Aston Martin's driver lineup was unchanged, and so was pretty much everything else. Well, apart from the brand new regulations. But in terms of performance, Seb easily outscored Lance for the 2nd year in a row. Lance didn't perform any miracles in the new ground effect car and drifted through the season as the 2nd fastest driver to wear green. He wasn't doing enough to prove the doubters wrong, and now the number 1 question on everyone's mind was, how will he fare against Fernando Alonso? Unfortunately for Lance, when Seb packed his bags, his father decided to replace the 4-time champion with a 2-time champion. This was bad news for Lance, but the good news was that their car was fast. Very fast. So fast, in fact, that pre-season testing had us all wondering if the team in green could be fighting for a world championship. But the bad news struck again pretty quickly for Lance. While cycling in Spain as part of his pre-season training, he had a very nasty accident and fell off his bike, breaking both wrists and a toe. And this was just weeks before the season started. To his credit though, he bounced back pretty quickly. He had to have surgery straight away, and 2 weeks after the crash, he said,
I couldn't move my hands, I couldn't walk, I broke my toe. Bahrain looked like it was very far away at the time. The light at the end of the tunnel was very far at the time.
It was so bad, doctors were sure that he'd miss at least the first race of the season. But Stroll overcame all adversity, and with the help of top-level physiotherapists and doctors, was able to recover just enough in time for season-opening Bahrain GP. He fought through the pain and stuck in a very respectable performance to finish 6th.
Okay, Lance, that's checkered flag. Checkered flag. It's
P6, mate, P6.
But when his wrists got better, the performances, well, they didn't get much better at all. At least not in comparison to Alonso, who was scoring podiums left, right, and center in the exact same car. The year started to spiral for Stroll, who couldn't handle the strength of his new teammate at all. 3 top 5 finishes were all he could wrestle out of the car, and the low points were far more frequent. Poor qualifying performances and race pace in the first half of the year, a massive crash in Singapore while driving over his limit.
Big crash on board with Lance Stroll. He was trying to wring the neck of the speed there.
An awful qualifying in Qatar, finishing a mind-boggling 1.1 seconds off Fernando. The Qatar weekend was when we saw the pressure really get to Stroll, as he pushed his trainer in anger and he got out of his car. This was unacceptable behaviour. It became obvious that he was cracking under the pressure. In the end, Alonso scored 8 podiums to Lance's 0, outqualified him 19-3, and scored 206 points to Lance's 74. But for some strange reason, Lance was kept on for 2024. It's difficult to see Lance taking a huge step in his 8th full-time F1 season, and with the same driver lineup against a teammate who is widely considered as one of the best to ever do it, it's even harder to see Lance coming close to beating Alonso. He's already crashed twice this year, and we're only 3 race weekends in. Across the weekend of the Saudi Arabian GP, he hit the wall twice, early in practice 1 and on lap 6 in the Grand Prix.
Off the road and into the wall. A heavy one.
Bad start, but Lance is on a rolling contract, so the question is he ever gonna get dropped? Throughout his F1 career so far, Lance has carried his accident-prone reputation with him, causing plenty of silly accidents and getting into far too many unnecessary incidents on track. He's made his share of small mistakes, and to be honest, I've made a couple in some recent videos too, so I feel you there, Lance. He had a relatively easy ride in his first 2 years of F1, but when met with the stiffer competition of Perez, Vettel and Alonso, in particular the latter, he's been shown up in the biggest way possible. His junior career was decent, but he's in the big leagues now, against the best drivers on the planet. There are plenty of drivers who deserve a chance in his seat, but as long as Daddy Stroll is at the helm of the ship, that's just not gonna happen. So let me know what you think of this controversial Canadian in the comments. And speaking of controversy, make sure you watch my video on the most controversial finish in F1 history.